Hello, welcome to The Luxury of Choice, a B2B sales skills and business podcast brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. My name is Steve Vaughan, I'm a senior sales trainer at George James, and I'm also the host and producer of this podcast. So this is another of our mid-month interview shows where I talk to a subject matter expert on a topic we think you, the listener, will find of interest and of value. And today I've got actually one of my training customers here today on the podcast, and her name is Debbie Airey Debbie. I've known now for about 4 years as a sales manager for a company called Crowcon, who are a specialist company in gas detection in the oil and gas industry. Debbie, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, Steve, for inviting me. I've been looking forward to today.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. And actually, now I've just said who you are and what you do, you've actually got a new job, haven't you?
I have.
Congratulations.
I have. Thank you very much. From the 15th of January, I'll be moving over to the Minicam Group as a sales director for the Halma Group.
And what does Minicam do?
Minicam make vehicles that essentially survey pipework for anything that's gone wrong in the pipework. So it's cameras that go through the pipework.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So my responsibility will be SIP, which is CIPP, and that's cure in place pipe. And I'll be responsible for a division called Dan Cutter and Sewertronics. So I'll be spending a lot of time travelling around Europe.
Fantastic. And these are like water pipes, gas pipes, all those things?
Mainly water pipes,
Okay.
yeah, but essentially the world is my oyster, or our oyster, I should say.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations and well done. And obviously looking
you.
forward to keeping in touch with you in your new role.
Thank you.
So I should explain to the listener that you and I come from the same part of the world. We come from the West Midlands. So
We do.
we may just drift into our home dialect. So we might need to put subtitles on this podcast.
For sure.
No, hopefully not. But anyway, great to have you here,
Thank
Deb,
you.
as I say. So I say we've been working together now for 3 or 4 years, really. But what I'd like to do, first of all, just explore a bit about your background. So how did you get into sales in the first place? What made you become a salesperson and then a sales manager?
Oh, wow. Originally, accidentally,
Okay.
I have to
Like
say.
most of
As
us,
I think
really.
most of us do, yeah, accidentally fell into sales. Never looked back. I actually started in customer services.
Right.
I was managing divisions for Vodafone. So I went from Vodafone on the technical side and the technical help desk, and then eventually literally found myself working for Linda Gas, managing their customer service and order division for the UK, with responsibility for medical and also export speciality gases.
Okay.
And then Crowcon came on the scene, and I've never looked back.
Absolutely. And then you've made quite a big difference to the team. I think we were saying beforehand you've kind of doubled the business since you've been here, something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. The UK team has grown immensely. So I started as the only salesperson within the UK.
Wow.
And then it just grew and grew and grew.
So how did that happen? What did you do to make that come about?
Research the UK sector,
Right.
research the customers that we had, and I had a wonderful opportunity of working with the current sales director, which is Neil Webster, to be able to restructure the team and understand what was needed within the UK to grow it. I researched the different verticals that we were concentrating on, so not just oil and gas, which helped us to maximise on those different customer sectors. And it meant a lot of work working with our distributors to restructure them and provide enough support for them to be able to grow themselves. So, yeah, that's how we did it. Yeah,
good for you. Well done. So you and I started working together really just as the pandemic was starting to happen, really. I think we had arranged a classroom training session and then COVID struck and we had to postpone that. So I think when we first started working, most of the sessions we were doing were remotely. And I guess now it's early 2024. It's like 4 years ago now since the pandemic happened. But we're all still living with those consequences, really. So thinking about your role as a sales manager, now sales director, what do you think has changed since those times, or if anything has, in terms of the job as a salesperson and also managing a sales team? What are your thoughts around that one?
It's really interesting, actually, what's happened since the pandemic, because from a sales perspective, a sales team is they're used to working from home. So they're used to working in some form of isolation in some respects. But we are also used to getting out and about. We're used to being in our cars and going and seeing customers. So when the pandemic, get my words out, when the pandemic struck, we were isolated, and we had to revert to everything working from home. And Teams took over our lives. I think everybody knows that tune now. When someone from Teams is calling you, that tune is just goes through your brain now. And that became life for a period of time. And then post the pandemic, it was quite interesting because we felt we needed to keep that element of administration work going. So we got used to a certain output of work by working from home. And then all of a sudden the pandemic's finished and we're bang straight back out there seeing our customers, seeing our clients. And we forgot about the driving time. And we forgot about the prep time of going to see a customer and the amount of effort and time that takes up. And we were trying to squeeze the same amount of work into the same day as we'd got used to working with all the admin work. And it becomes exhausting trying to do that. And it was about resetting those expectations to, okay, what do we actually need to be doing? What is the quality work that needs to come out of those customer meetings? What is the objectives for those customer meetings? What do we actually need to talk about? And just reassessing those whole environments and conversations.
Interesting.
And during the pandemic was interesting as well because it did force us to be more empathetic with each other and even getting used to your own environments again because everybody was working at home. You're trying to have, a client meeting with somebody over Teams, for example, and, I don't know, there's cats and dogs jumping on your table, there's husbands walking past and kids are running everywhere. It's that type of thing. And it's about, okay, this is actually life and it's okay.
Absolutely.
It's actually okay. So there was an element of that as well. And that forced a bit more of a human side into everything.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I've run training courses remotely when our two dogs have banged the door open and come looking for their dinner. So I know exactly what you mean there. And it's an interesting point. I think that's sort of human element, that it's okay to be human.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's also okay to have issues.
Yeah.
I think those things became more apparent during the pandemic, don't they?
100%.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be vulnerable. So prior to the pandemic, did a training session with the team, and it was based on a podcast actually that I'd heard that was called "Stand Guard by the Door of Your Mind."
Okay.
Stand Guard of the Door of Your Mind. And it was really interesting. It was based on the information that you listen and you hear, especially on things like social media, where there can be a lot of negativity around, a lot of rubbish, a lot of that sort of stuff. And it's a bit like what you eat, basically. You put in rubbish, you get out rubbish. And you did a whole session on that, but also covered off vulnerabilities. And as a team, we all shared a vulnerable session, something that was close to us and was vulnerable. But during the pandemic, it really sort of drew that out. And I was glad I did that activity because it was the foundation that we could then leap from during the pandemic. And we all became our own support network.
Absolutely.
And I just made sure we had regular catch-ups, but quality catch-ups with each individual within the team so that we could ask how each other was. And it wasn't just a, how you doing? It was a real meaningful, how are you? What is happening with you right now? What is, how are you actually feeling? And it was those type of conversations. And we were all allowed that space, and we made sure we could do that for each other. And the team just grew. It grew in strength more than anything. And I'm
sure that's one of the reasons for the success that you've had, really, in that it's come across, when I've worked with you and the team, really, that you've got an interest in them as individuals as a manager. It's not just what are the numbers, what's their forecast, but how are you? Is that something that you consciously put work into as a manager?
Definitely. It's really important that I understand the team as individuals. They're not a team without being the individuals. I have to know what makes them tick. I have to understand where they are in their lives. But, I'm asking a lot of them. So I have to understand where their vulnerabilities are, where their strengths are, where their developments are. And you can't do that unless you actually know somebody. And it's about respecting them as people because they are a person.
Completely.
And that's it. So we do work on that a lot, and we constantly remind ourselves as a team of that because that becomes our strength. Our vulnerability is our strength, basically.
Fantastic. And do you schedule that as a planned activity with the team, or is it more of an ad hoc thing that you do?
A bit of both, actually, because you could catch somebody on a day where they just need to talk, and you have to be open enough to see that as well, to really see that in somebody. For example, if you're planning somebody's appraisal, but they're not really there, there's something happened, they might be poorly, there might be something happening in their private lives, that's not the right time to do an appraisal.
No, absolutely.
Because they need to be fully present. And an appraisal is about, talking about as an example, an appraisal is about celebrating success. You can't do that if somebody's got something else going on in the background. It's not fair. No. So, they're scheduled and they're ad hoc.
And this interest in people that you've got, and it comes out across loud and clear from you, Debs, as a manager, is that something that's intrinsic in you, or is it something that you've learned here in the Halma Group, you think?
It's intrinsic in me, but I've been able to develop it within the Halma Group and really make it more laser focused with some of the training courses that Halma offer.
Good.
I've been incredibly lucky to have been placed on some of these training courses that are they're absolutely excellent.
Good. Yeah. I did work for a Halma company 20 plus years ago, show my age, and I think the group's changed completely since that time, really, and clearly there's a lot more focus on HR and personal development and those things since those times. Going back to the pandemic then, so what I hear a lot when I talk to salespeople at the moment is it's hard to get hold of people. Ever since the pandemic, people don't want to see you. We can't get appointments. It's people just won't see you. Do your team find the same thing, or has it been not so much of an issue for you in your business?
Definitely not that issue for us, I have to say. Yeah, I have to say. But we go about things a little bit differently. Okay. So as I've just described to you there about the people, you put the people forward, that's how we treat our customers as well. That customer is a person. Respect them as a person. How would you like to be treated if you were being approached or prospected?
Absolutely.
And that's how we approach it. So we prefer it to be relationship building as opposed to a transactional conversation. Okay. And that's how we lead on it. So we don't have any issues. In fact, we're busier than we've ever been. And I was talking to a member of my team just last week actually. And I said, how you doing after Christmas? And he said, I'm shattered. He said, I thought there was normally a downturn at Christmas. And I was laughing to myself. And he said, but it's not. He said, I'm the busiest I've ever been. There was too many inquiries coming in, champagne problems, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So no, we didn't find that. We were flat out during the pandemic. In fact, we were chomping at the bit to be able to go and see customers because the level of inquiries. Yeah. And then post-pandemic, it just went flat out.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So I want to move to a slightly different topic, if I may. I'll make some assumptions here. Please tell me if I'm going down the wrong route. But in the oil and gas industry that you're working currently, I realise you're moving into a new role. But I would imagine, don't get me wrong, but it's a mostly male-dominated industry. Would that be a fair assumption? Customers and things. So, has there been any challenges as a female manager working in that industry? And if so, how have you adopted and worked on those at all? Yeah,
there has been challenges. Yeah, absolutely. And those have been challenges that I've faced throughout my career, not just here. If I go back a little bit into history, for example, working in the gas manufacturing, so if I'm walking into a welding plant, for example, predominantly it's a male industry-led area, and it was always quite a surprise that I could actually weld. So I'd come across it, but I tend to approach those things with a level of humour to try and diffuse a situation or make them less awkward. But, certainly there is those challenges. And unfortunately, it still happens. You still face them. You still might go and see a client, for example, that doesn't expect you to be female. And I've even had an instance where I've been with a male colleague and the client has left me in reception, not realising
No way.
Yeah, not realising I'm actually there to see them and took my male colleague off up the stairs.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is quite interesting. It does still happen. But it is the way that you react to it. And I always, if it goes further than that and it's something a little bit more sinister, which does happen still, then I just reinforce healthy boundaries. I make sure my communication is clear about where those boundaries are. And I'm quite firm with it, very firm with it. And the reason that I am very firm with it, if it's gone to a different level, is because I'm also protecting the team that's coming post me. If I don't do it, they're not going to know how to behave either, as in know how to protect themselves. But also I've got to set an example. I see my role as setting an example to other people. And it may be that the individual that is potentially overstepping the line doesn't know or doesn't realise they're overstepping the line, or has done it for so long they don't think it's a problem. But it's a case of going, putting those healthy boundaries in place to ensure the people that come after me don't face that.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess with our kind of background and our corporate backgrounds, to imagine those kind of things still happening in 2024 is hard to imagine. But from what you're saying, they still do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely, they do.
Sounds like you've got a great way of handling it, and let's hope those things disappear into the distance in the years to come. So
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. But for now, they still happen. Not often, but they still happen. Yeah.
Not good. So one of the things that I'm super impressed with you, Debs, all the time is that I see your LinkedIn activity.
Yeah.
Now, we've spoke a lot about LinkedIn, and one of the statistics on LinkedIn is that I think only 5% of LinkedIn users ever post any content.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think you and I are in the 5%.
Yeah.
But I love what you do. So I know, for instance, that you do a lot of running and fitness activities and things, and your LinkedIn feed is very much not so much about you at work, but it's you in your running and your Ironman activities. Is that a deliberate thing?
It is. And I think you summed it up lovely on one of our fantastic training courses, plug to Steve.
Thank you, I'll pay you later.
And it's a phrase that you termed about it being a personal brand, which I hadn't realised before, but that's where I'm going with it. And it is a personal brand because my LinkedIn is me as opposed to the business that I'm in. So, yeah, it is about me as a human being, because I want to put, as I impress on the team and everybody else about it being the person, it is for me too. So, I have to practice what I preach. So LinkedIn is my personal brand, absolutely. Yeah.
And do you find it helps in terms of, obviously, your career, but also in terms of new business and finding new customers?
I feel like it's made me more approachable.
Interesting.
But that's for me. It might not be for somebody else who's not necessarily comfortable in doing that. But certainly for me, I've found that it's made me approachable and less corporate if I'm prospecting somebody else. Yeah, so that's how I found it's helped me. But I quite enjoy updating the stuff, and a lot of my team have actually practiced that as well.
You've got some great team members. Jackie is one, for instance, who's fantastic and
awesome.
things.
Yeah, Jackie's been doing it for a while now, I love seeing her updates, and they make me chuckle. Sometimes it could be a poem, sometimes it could be something she's just thought of that day, but also she puts her personal brand on that as well.
Absolutely, she does.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. And I've got a new team member that's having a lot of fun with it at the moment, Chris, because every client he goes to see at the moment appears to have a green shed on side. So
really?
He's collecting images of green sheds at the moment. So it's an in-joke, but it's actually gaining this traction throughout LinkedIn. It's quite amusing, actually.
You could call it 50 Shades of Green. Sorry, that was a terrible joke.
It's not, actually. He'll listen to this and laugh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Fascinating. And I think, you said it really, really well. It shows somebody that you're making contact with on LinkedIn, potentially to do business with, that you're not just the corporate face, aren't you? You're a real person, really. And I think, as you mentioned, your team members are great at that, really. And the fact that we remember it, their customers probably remember it as well, which is what it's all about, isn't it, really?
Exactly. I think we have to be careful with the brand. I think you see images on there when maybe it's turning a little bit into Facebook sometimes, and I definitely shy away from that.
Yeah, me too.
I prefer for it to be the professional network, which is what it's supposed to be. And if and when I do obviously put some corporate images and information on there, I make sure it's factual. So it does switch between the human side to the corporate side. But I think it's a really important thing to do.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, good for you. So let's think about your new role then. So you're starting in, is it next week you start?
Monday.
Wow, exciting.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So what will what would the first 30 days be for you? What kind of things will you be doing in those 30 days? Obviously you don't know the detail yet, but what would you think your first 30 days might look like?
The hardest thing that a salesperson can ever do is listen. And that's what I'm going to be doing.
Right.
So for the first 30 days, I'll be listening. I'm going to be making introductions to the key stakeholders within the business, hopefully see some clients. But that's what I'll be doing, listening, observing.
Learning.
Learning.
Because it is I guess it's not a million miles away from what you're doing, but it's just a different type of industry, is it? Yeah.
It's a different industry, but also it's a different role.
Right.
So I am going to be moving from being potentially what you would call a functional leader to a direction leader.
Okay.
So there is also that learning. Now, I'm very lucky because the training courses that I've been put on with Halma have prepared me for that, but there's nothing that actually doing it. That's what will actually help me. So I need to be there to put that into practice, basically.
Okay. And then the next 60 and 90 days, where would that be, do you think?
strategies.
Right.
So I've already got my plan. You know me, there's always a strategy for everything. So I've already got my plan in place. And again, there is an onboarding plan that I've been there's already been set out for me, but primarily about building strategies. So taking the learnings that I'll have for the first 30, 60 days and start building the strategies and looking for some output already.
Fantastic. So if you had a time machine now, if we can invent a time machine in your factory downstairs, I should say we're in the Crowcon office here in Abingdon, but if we can go and build a time machine downstairs now. And
we'd make a lot of money.
We would make a lot of money. We wouldn't be doing podcasts, would we now? But if you could go back and speak to yourself, say 20 years ago,
wow.
What advice would you give a 20 years younger?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to do the maths. So 20 years ago, it would actually be trust your instincts.
Right.
Yeah, trust your instincts and everything will work out. You know, trust that gut instinct, because that's what I've learned to do now, go with my gut instinct.
Okay. Is that the experience that you've got now, the fact that you've got 20 years on, you've got that experience, you know your gut is right? Or is that, okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to tell myself that back then. And as we mentioned before we started the podcast, there's always the element of imposter syndrome. Yeah. I think I had that a lot back in the day. And that did prevent me moving on within my career in certain roles. I'd like to say, don't worry about that. Stop listening to that little evil man in your head. It's not there. Go for it. Right. That's what I would like to do. Trust yourself.
Imposter syndrome is something that comes up. I face it time to time in my job when I'm training people, in a particularly a large classroom of people. So how do you handle that one then? Do you still get it now?
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's a bit of a different feeling now. I know it's there, but it's more a case of, go on then. Let's give this a go. It's making me feel uncomfortable, which is telling me something. Right. If that's telling me something, it means let's give it a try. It's pushing me outside of my comfort zone, and that means let's go. Let's do it. It's a bit like when you're looking over the edge of a cliff. You know, are you going to go? You trust yourself? That trustful. So yeah, that's how I handle it now. If it's making me feel uncomfortable, that's a sign.
Interesting. One of the things we talk about in our training, I think we've done with your team, is recognising your comfort zone. Yeah. And most people don't want to step out of their comfort zone for obvious reasons, because it's comfortable. Yeah. But what you're saying is that you've learned to recognise that as a good thing.
Definitely. That combined with some of the training that I've had, understand what your core beliefs are. Okay. And if it's pushing against a core belief, it's one or the other. It's either a good thing or it's something that's going against your core belief. It's a bad thing. So just knowing the difference between the two. And that's something I've instilled with, or start to instill with the team as well. What is your core belief? What makes you tick as a person? If something's pushing you and it's uncomfortable, it's always going to be one or the other.
I'm a great believer that we tend to do our best work, both personally and in life, when we are out of our comfort zone. Yeah. It's that place where it's like, ooh, it's a bit strange, but it's a bit exciting as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. And a good coaching session will make that happen as well. We'll bring those feelings up. A growth model. I like using that during a good coaching session. It's pushing somebody to understand what is the objective they want out of that coaching session. How are we going to get there? And if it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then we're probably on the right track.
So that's interesting. You brought up another topic there, which I'd like to explore. So coaching.
Yeah.
We both use the GROW model in your coaching. Is that something you've actively worked on as a manager?
Always coaching, always. Ever since back in the day when I was at Vodafone, moving on from there, every single role I've been in, it's always been about coaching. Right. And actually, you're coaching your peers as well. It's not about your team, it's your peers, it's everyone around you, and coaching up too, because every day is a school day. No one knows everything. So every opportunity can be a coaching opportunity.
And is coaching something you feel comes naturally to you, or is it something you've had to work at?
It's a natural thing, but it's definitely something to work at and continue to work at. And there's always something new to learn, always something new to learn. Because, like I say, every day is a school day. And coaching should make you feel a little bit uncomfortable as well, because you can be talking about topics that are a little bit challenging, and no one likes confrontation, really. So coaching is about working around that topic to get the best out of the whole situation.
What do you think makes a good coach?
Listening.
I agree. Yeah. You got an example? Anything you can think of? Obviously, don't go into anything that's confidential or specific, but...
Well, because coaching happens all the time, there's been, so for example, coaching around how to handle a particular distributor. So, there may be some challenges faced at the distributor. It may be that particular customer is finding some difficulties within the industry or the current climate that we're facing at the moment. And it's about how do we coach that person to be able to handle that distributor. And it's about understanding the objectives for the person that's, the account manager that's looking after it, but also where they are as a person in their career, in their journey, how experienced are they, and how are they going to handle that conversation. So yeah, there is an example of that, and it's about walking them through it to say, right, okay, this is what you want out of it, but actually the objective you think you're going to get out of it, what are you going to do if that doesn't quite work? Or what are you going to do if it doesn't quite look like that? Is there an alternative? So that particular type of coaching session is about preparing them for alternative outcomes as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you don't want them to come out of that, potentially feeling like they've fallen or they've failed. It's about saying, well, actually, it's always a practice environment. You can't break it. You can't break it. It's about providing that environment where they can fail fast and know that they're not going to get criticised for it. So coaching isn't just about, the old traditional way of doing it. It's actually providing that environment for them where they know they can fail and they know it's okay to admit it.
Absolutely.
And just do it quickly and then learn from it, move on and say it's okay. It's always about a safe environment.
So many people think coaching is telling, and it's not telling.
Yeah.
It's helping people realise the way forward themselves, really. And you mentioned the GROW model, and you gave a great example there. What are the alternatives? The O is what are the options,
exactly,
and what are the alternatives? And that was a great example. And I think it's one of the things that we talk about in our leadership training is the difference between being a leader and a manager. And a leader is somebody that can do exactly as you've said, really. Yeah. Allow people to try things, to fail, not all the time, obviously, but to try things and fail and learn from that experience, really. So
100%.
Fantastic.
Well, that's what life's about. It will throw you curveballs.
Oh, completely.
So, yeah, if anybody goes into a meeting assuming what the outcome is going to be, then that's mistake number one.
Completely.
Before they've even gone in. So prepare. Yeah, prepare for various outcomes.
Absolutely. So you've got this exciting new opportunity that starts on Monday.
I have, yes.
But where do you see yourself perhaps in 5 years' time?
Oh, wow. It sounds like you're interviewing me.
No. Well,
yes,
yeah, but not
Steve,
that way.
This is where I see myself in 5 years' time. Why not progress? I see myself as actually, I really want to make a success, obviously, out of this role.
Of course.
And I'm sure my new MD at Minicam will like to hear me say I'm going to double sales. There we go. On the table. There we go. You heard it here first. There we go. But I'd like to continue growing within that role and see what other opportunities arise to me within the Halma Group. So that might be MD level next. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? That's the beauty of the Halma Group. That is, it could be anything. It's just, the opportunities are out there. And the thing is, when you're starting to work with other companies within the group, other operating companies, you don't necessarily need to move. You're kind of expanding your role without even getting out, without even moving. It's just absolutely amazing. I've done that here within the Crowcon team without moving. I've been able to work with various different operating companies within the group, helping build different sales strategies for them, talking about different challenges and trying to bring companies together so that, we're working towards a client, for example, supporting a client with 3 or 4 different Halma companies as opposed to approaching it with just Crowcon, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, you can do so much.
Absolutely. So, Debs, it's been great catching up with you today and finding out about your new exciting role, as well as obviously the things that you've been doing here at Crowcon. So thanks ever so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You've been great, a great guest, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon in the near future. So if you, the listener, have enjoyed today's show, then don't forget to subscribe in your favourite podcast app. We would also love you to leave us a review if you listen on Apple or Spotify. It does help us in lots of mysterious ways. I'll be back again in 2 weeks' time with my colleagues Prue and Jonathan, and our topic will be product demonstrations and the role of the demonstration in the sales process. And finally, a reminder that we would love to hear from you. So if you've got a question or a topic that you would like to raise, then please do so by emailing us at podcast@georgejamestraining.com. That's podcast@georgejamestraining.com. And if you would like the question to be anonymous, then please make that clear in your email. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.